Now on this channel we love our Langsaxes, and today I'm going to talk about this Langsax from Gotland. Well, first of all, what is Gotland? Well, Gotland is an island in the Baltic Sea. It is a place I have never been to in the real life. Maybe in the past as a Viking I may have gone there, but in the real world, in the 21st century, so far in my life, I have never been to Gotland, and I'd love to go. And Gotland is a famous place when it comes to Viking history, let alone the archaeology that has come from there. And this is one of those items. This is a reproduction of a Langsax that was found in Gotland. Maybe it's slightly inspired by it, but I like to think it is a very nice item. It is for a Langsax. And what is a Langsax? You know, if you never watched the channel before, you may be saying, well, Braggy, what is a Langsax? I do not know what you're talking about. Well, here we have a Seax. This is the knife of the Saxons and the Vikings. Of course, the Vikings tend to call it a sax. The Saxons call it a Seax. It's just slightly different pronunciation on the word and the name, but they both represent the same thing. And this is a typical broken back knife, and this is what it means by the broken back. Now this is a blunt one, so it's quite safe for me to run my hands across it because it's designed and made for combat as it shines in the sun. Wow. And this is the broken back element of it. And the typical good broken back Seax always has this taper, and it tapers down to a point and has a straight blade. I'm sure you agree that's a fantastic Seax, and it's got a lovely antler handle, and it really is nice and comfy in your hand. And the idea of having a bulky end is so that when you use it in battle, if you're not rich enough to own a Langsax, or you're not rich enough to own a sword, you have a good handle to stop it from falling out and flying out of your hand. Because let's face it, there you are with your good old shield, and you're attacking, and if it flies out of your hand, well, you're down to your shield as a weapon, and unless you got another Seax or an axe on your boat, well, you're pretty screwed. So this is what a Seax is. But a Langsax, it's the same thing, apart from the lang part of it represents length or long. Lang is the Saxon word for long, which is where long comes from. No doubt it goes further back in history and is a Proto-Germanic word. But, you know, we're not experts on the channel on words, and I do like it shining in the sun because it's a lovely sunny day. But let's talk about this Langsax and why I love it. Now, when I bought this Langsax, it never came with a sheath or a scabbard. I will make a sheath for it. And always remember, folks, that scabbards are solid and sheaths are flexible to a certain degree. This is not flexible simply because it's got a copper band at the top to keep it rigid, but generally on a good sheath it's flexible and you can bend it, unless you got a top mounting like this, which doesn't make a difference. But that is one task I've got to do, is to make a sheath for it, and I'm going to make quite a nice elaborate one with some brass. Perhaps I might even send it to Iric and get him to make me one, because he's brilliant at making sheaths. I must say, that man has a skill. And of course, as a Viking and Saxon reenactor of many years, you do learn these skills. It's not just the skills of fighting you learn and drinking mead. You also learn how to sew. You learn leather work. You learn metal work, from silversmithing to, you know, smithing of iron. You learn all these skills, and woodwork and wood turning. These are all the skills you can pick up and learn as a reenactor, and lots of these very good societies will teach you these skills because they're so essential, and especially sewing. And I do say this in the modern world, that everybody should learn to sew. And again, this is a blunt Seax or Langsax, so it won't cut me. It's designed for combat, which is why there's no point on it, unlike a sharp Langsax, which I don't really have any of, really. I don't really own a sharp Langsax so far in my life, and I think it's quite spectacular. I would say it's about 16 inches in length when it comes to the blade. That's the guess at the moment because I don't have a ruler on me. But it is very, very nice and has a very nice bone handle. which I hope you can see, with a typical ring and dock pattern, and 2 brass mountings, one here and one there, and it actually has been put together really well. Sometimes you buy things like I have this Germanic Seax, which has a different design. It's more of a machete. This handle is slowly getting loose and twist because it's not been bonded on properly. This is by Celtic Web Merchant, which make and do have some splendid kit. But at some point in its future, I'm going to have to take this handle off and put a new handle on. And I'm going to go for one of this style, I think, because I think it would look really nice. And it's a shame, really, because it does have a very nice handle, as I'm being careful, because this is quite sharp. And as I say, it twists round and I can feel it twisting in my hand. So again, it just demonstrates that it's just not been put on properly and hasn't been bonded on efficiently to stop that from happening. But these are the things that happen when you buy Viking kit. And of course, the better the kit, the less problems you're going to have with it, which is why I always go for a really good trader. Again, with this one here, it doesn't turn at all on the handle. The handle is solidly put onto this Seax and won't turn at all, and it's not loose. And again, that is one of the proper aspects you need of a good Seax, because it's very important that when you're fighting with these combat weapons, that your weapons are safe. And thank the gods that we have really good training officers and people and master at arms who will go along and check your weapons, look for these faults and problems, check for sharp burrs, make sure you're not carrying a sharp weapon onto the battlefield, because that would be deadly if you hit somebody with one of these, because it's sharp and you shouldn't take it on the battlefield. That is simply for display only. So back to the old Gotland Langsax. Again, it has 2 mountings of brass, they're both caps, and I think that's a really nice feature. And again, it's, if you can see it in the sunlight, it's got a cap and it's been riveted on, so the tang goes through and the tang is riveted over the brass cap, and it's been put on really nicely. And again, it's very important that, and I try to twist it, it won't twist, so I'm really impressed with this one. Now, it does have a slight fuller, and a fuller is there just to take some of the weight off the blade, but also to stretch the blade out when you're manufacturing and making either a sword or a Seax. Most Seaxes don't have fullers, but this one does, and it's very small. It's generally just for the design element and to make it look a bit nice and not just have a plain handle. And of course, if yours really rich, this will be, you know, this will have all writing when it comes to inlay of brass and copper and silver. Of course, I'm just not that rich to have a nice Langsax like that, like the Saxa Bjorgnoth, which is a very famous Langsax found in the Thames in London in the late 19th century, which I've done a short video on, and I will cover in the future with a long video. And one day I do hope to get a really good copy of that Langsax, because I really would like one. And I do often wonder about that Seax, whether it was a demonstration piece by a blacksmith to demonstrate his skills because of the elaborate inlay that was in it. But that's a story for another day. So why is a Langsax a really good weapon to have as a second weapon? Well, if you can't afford a sword, and most people were not elite enough, or not part of that, you know, very small crowd of people that could afford a sword, then this is the poor man's alternative. And I think it's just great with the fact that, you know, you can carry one of these. And yes, at the moment, it'd be difficult to carry this because I don't have a sheath for it. But you could shove it down your belt and carry it that way, as long as it doesn't fall out. Again, what would you be armed with? Well, most warriors would have a good shield, for instance, because shields are very essential. And most warriors would have an axe, because axes were all over the place. Because if you lived in a longer house, you needed an axe to chop your firewood, and you probably have 2 or 3 axes. And if you're really rich, you may have a Dane axe like this. And it's amazing to think that after the Viking era, the Dane axe still carried on, and one of the few Viking weapons that was still popular in the 12th and 13th century, simply because the Dane axe could tear through armour really efficiently. Whereas something like this would be very difficult to take down an armoured man if he was in plate armour or had a suit of armour on. So these went out of fashion. Of course, it wasn't just the Vikings that had Langsaxes. For here we have a Frankish Langsax with a nice wooden handle. And this was bought from Etsy, and I must say this is very nice. On the handle has been put on lovely. It's not loose at all, and I've used it to hit my wooden trunk in my garden, the shield, quite a few times. And this is another really nice example of a Langsax. So it wasn't just the Vikings and the Saxons that had them. They was quite universal. But as I said a minute ago, what did the Langsax turn into when you get to the 12th and 13th century? Well, it turned into the falchion, which I have in my hand, which is a single edge short sword or knife. Again, it has a slightly different feature when it comes to the end. It's got a round end, and this developed over time and got away from the broken back design. And this, I think I paid £15 or £20 for this, and it's a really nice falchion. So the Langsax, as you can see here, developed from this into this. And I'm sure you agree, this is a very deadly and heavy weapon. I have used this a little bit in combat, and it's really nice to fight with. I wouldn't want it to be any more heavy than what it is now, because it could really do some damage if you hit somebody on the arm, for instance. You don't want to hurt somebody and break their arm. But it feels nice on the hand as well. And again, this is being put together by somebody with a lot of skill, and it's got a round pommel, which is a later design in pommel, and a nice cross guard, and it's got a really nice handle. And the feature on the handle, which you can see, it's being worked a little bit to give it a bit more extra grip. But this is a superbly put together falchion, and it also has a bit of Latin on the scabbard, which I don't think you're going to see, or the sheath. This is a sheath because it's flexible and not a scabbard. A scabbard would have an internal wooden section to keep it solid, and some days I like a sheath and some days I like a scabbard, but it depends on the weapon. And again, it also has this feature here, which is a peace tie, and I had this on, although, you know, this kind of came in during the Saxon times. Whether it continued in later history, I don't know, but I think it's a good idea, so I assume it would continue. Because the reason why you have a tie on your sword scabbard is so that when you're marching or when you're riding, you can tie it off. I can put it round the back, and I can tie it off like this, and it's got two glass beads for decoration. And by doing this, when I'm marching or riding my horse, it won't fall out. As you can see there, I'm trying to pull it out. It just won't come out of the scabbard. And again, it's got a top mount. It's not got the best rivets in the world. It's a little bit too modern for my liking, but I kind of kept it the way it is, simply because I didn't want to have to unsew it and change it. I'll just pay respect to the person that made it and the way it came. And again, this is too late for the Viking era. Sure, we would all love to have falchions as Vikings and Saxons, but again, it's a 12th and 13th century weapon. Yes, maybe as a late Norman, Anglo-Norman, you could probably use one of these. But again, it also shows and demonstrates that you've got coin and the money to have such an item. So yes, it's not all about spears and Dane axes, as we do love those items. But some days, it's some of these items, which I think are spectacular, are the best. But what do you think? Which of these weapons would you prefer? Would you take a Langsax into battle, the Gotland one, or would you take a falchion? Oh, please let me know in the videos, because I'd love to hear your reactions. And if you have enjoyed this video, if you found it to be entertaining, educational, if you learned something new, then please consider subscribing. Go and smash that subscribe button, hit the bell, then you'll be notified when we release content, which is mostly every day. And you will see me in the next video. Please leave me a good old knife or axe emoji if you're a bit shy, and share the videos. Thank you. Goodbye from me. Goodbye from Blaggy. And we'll see you in the next video. Hail the gods, and hail all those that watch.
Welcome to Northworthy Sagas and Stories. Please subscribe and also click on the notification bell. Thank you for watching.